I'm Judith Lay, welcoming you to the podcast of the MANX Sky at Night with Howard Parkin.
The Nation Station, MANX Radio.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
We haven't got a moment to waste. Let's welcome him to the microphone. Faster my Howard Parkin.
Faster my Judith, it's great to be here again.
Well, good to welcome you into the studio, Howard. And you've got a packed programme for us, haven't you?
As always.
Well, go for it.
Right, well, there's just so much to talk about because I must just start actually with last night. Last night, the weather's been awful over here recently, hasn't it? It's just absolutely awful. Cloud all the time. But last night I went out to the bin about 11 o'clock in my dressing gown and my pyjamas and my slippers. And I went out to the bin and I looked up and the sky was spectacular. It really was outstanding. And you know, I say to people all the time about the winter here in the Isle of Man. The winter is the best time to look at the stars because there's so many bright stars around. And just as a big bonus, we've got the planets Jupiter and Mars thrown in as well at the moment. And last night I was looking up thinking, wow, you could see Mars was red, you could see all the other stars in the winter hexagon. And it just was a spectacular night. And I thought, it nearly made me get cold because I stood out there for about 10 minutes, I think, before I finally thought, I think I better go to bed. But no, it was spectacular last night.
Stargazing in your pyjamas, not recommended.
Not recommended. Certainly not a spectator sport anyway.
No, but actually, you know, you're saying about the weather being bad. What I think we've had is huge contrast.
Yes.
I mean, we've had nights when it's been thick fog,
yeah,
even at like low level, street level, not just on high ground. And then other nights when it's been so peaceful and calm, you felt that you could have reached up and touched the stars.
It was like that last night. It really was good.
Yeah.
And what people do forget is we have got this phenomenon of the fact that in the winter we have these massive number of bright stars. I always told them the top 12. There's 12 very bright stars in a very small part of the sky. The rest of the year you get 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. You don't get anything like the spectacular skies we get in winter. So, listeners, go out tonight. When I came to the studio, when I left home, it was clear. When I got to the studio, it was cloudy. But go outside and just look up. And most people know where the constellation Orion is. Constellation Orion is quite distinctive with the 3 stars in a line pointing up and down. Follow the line up. I'll tell everyone to follow the line up to Aldebaran, this principal star in Taurus the Bull, or down to the principal star in Canis Major, Sirius at the bottom. But just go up a bit from Aldebaran and you'll see a very distinctively very bright object. That's the planet Jupiter. Now come across the sky and you'll see 2 stars next to each other. They're the 2 twin stars of Gemini. Just below and slightly to the left is the planet Mars. And to get these 2 bright planets in the sky at the same time is it's not unusual, but it's rare, but it does happen from time to time. And then if you're really feeling lucky, turn around the other direction, you'll see Venus over the western horizon. We really are blessed with a plethora of planets at the moment. And at the end of January, we're going to have all 7 planets, everyone except Mercury, will all be visible in a chain going across the sky, right across. So quite spectacular for the end of January. Nice start to the new year astronomically, I think.
Well, you do say, you've just reminded us again that this is absolutely the best time. So it really is worth keeping an eye out because in the course of an evening, the conditions can vary, can't they?
The conditions can vary. And of course, the stars rise 4 minutes early. I've told you this before on the radio. The stars rise 4 minutes earlier every day, which is why we get this seasonal variation. So Orion and all those bright stars will slowly track across the sky. For me, I don't need a calendar. When Orion starts to fall over, we're heading to spring. Because when Orion rises in the east and he rises up and he stands up vertical about late end of December, beginning of January, and then in the 8, 9, 10 o'clock time, as he slowly starts to fall over, as he comes up 4 minutes earlier each day, you see spring is on its way. And that's for me is a true sign of spring coming.
and a very hopeful sign. That's what we like.
Want.
What about meteor showers or anything? Because you would.
Glad you mentioned that, because the quadrantid meteor shower is one that is very often forgotten. In all the excitement of Christmas, there's two showers. One, the Ursids, which have gone. They were in 21st of December. But the quadrantid meteor shower, not far from the Plough, the Big Dipper, as some people call it, is a very good shower. One of the best showers we get, but always forgotten about. And by the time people like me tell people to go out and look for it, it's usually gone. It's the 4th of January. So this weekend, if you get a chance, yes, look at all these lovely bright stars of winter in the southern sky, but go to the north, turn round, look for the Plough, find the Plough, and just below the handle of the Plough is the radiant point of the quadrantid meteors, and they're always worth looking out for. And you do see quite a few, and this is one of the few showers that comes from a northern aspect, therefore the moonlight doesn't interfere with it. I mean, at the moment, the moon is new, I think, the next couple of days, not sure the exact days, but you don't need to worry about moonlight because you're looking in the north. So the quadrantid meteor shower, very good to see at this time of year. It centres on around the 3rd and 4th of the month.
And speaking of the moon, let's just make a little mention of this, because I've got a feeling that I'm going to get engrossed in all the other topics that you're going to talk about. And I'm going to forget about this, and then I shall be cross with myself. But actually, the moon is coming to Earth, isn't it?
The moon is coming to Peel Cathedral, no less.
Well, now, if anybody, and lots of people, about 13,000 people did see Gaia when the Earth came to St Thomas's. This is the same kind of installation.
Exactly the same.
But it's the moon, and of course, in the cathedral, in the newly remodelled interior of the cathedral.
Oh yes, it will be spectacular. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm quite involved with doing it with Rosemary there, setting up all the different activities we're going to be doing. It's going to be open to schools, for visitors. There's a series of talks by myself and others, a whole host of things going on. And it's here for 3 weeks, I think it is. 4 weekends, 3 weeks over the half-term period in February. So great opportunity to see it. And what I'm looking forward to doing is not just looking at it from an artistic point of view in a beautiful setting of the nave of the cathedral, but I'll take my main laser pointer along with me, and I point at all the landing sites, not just of the Apollo missions that have been in the past, but where we're hoping to go with the Artemis missions, which has just been put back, incidentally, from 25 to 26, but that's by and by. But it's quite exciting, and to be able to look at the moon in its all its glory in this wonderful setting, I think it'll be very spectacular and well worth a visit.
But isn't it interesting that you can, as you say, take it on two levels? Mind you, Gaia, the world was like that. You could take that on every. You could just sort of sit there and absorb the atmosphere, or you could look at it and make your own. See how it spoke to you. But with the moon, as you say, to be able to pick out the landing sites and say, well, you know, this and
where Apollo 11 landed, or whatever, yeah.
And there are areas that are named, and so you can say this is the, whatever.
Ocean of Storms, or the Sea of Tranquility, or whatever you want to call them, which they're all the names that we've given to them, going back to Galileo's day when he realised they weren't seas at all. So the history of the observations of the moon itself will come up in one of the talks I'm going to be giving for them. But it's a fascinating object, and we've always been fascinated by the moon, and this is our opportunity to see it very close as we're ever going to see it from a Manx perspective. I
think for children, the educational value of it is going to be enormous.
Well, this is it. You can turn the lights down. I don't know if they're going to do this. I should have suggested this to them at Rosemary. You can turn the lights down and shine a torch on it. You can show the phases. You could actually start showing the phases of the moon with a big spotlight and a big torch. There's so much you can do, and I think it hopefully will inspire people, not just for astronomy, which is obviously what I'm talking about from the astronomical perspective, but the creation of the moon and the creation of the earth and the origin of the universe and all this sort of stuff. It all comes into it, and it makes you think, and it's a great opportunity to see it in a wonderful setting.
I think that everybody will take something differently from it. When I saw Gaia, saw the world, the thing that struck me was that, we talk about different countries, we talk about Africa and Japan and Australia, whatever it might be. But when you looked at it like that, it didn't look like separate countries. No. It looks like it is all one.
One big mass.
Obviously, you could see where there would be water and where there would be, but it just looked like one.
Well, you know where global consciousness came from. They reckon the birth of global consciousness and our ability to see the Earth as a body with no borders was from the Apollo astronauts all those years ago. And they saw the Earth as a beautiful blue and white marble in space, and they realised there's no borders, there's no distinction between peoples or whatever. It's just a beautiful object, and the idea to protect it, and environmental protection and global awareness, stems from the late 60s.
Yeah. So who knows how this might
Hopefully this
inspire
might have
people.
a similar effect when we look at the moon.
But as well as the educational side of it, which I'm sure that we will exploit in every possible
very
way,
much
to have some lovely music, and I'm sure we'll have lovely concerts the way we had in St Thomas's, and so the atmosphere will be.
It will be very good. A great location for it as well. I mean, there aren't many places where you could put an object this size. Obviously, churches are ideal for it because of the nature of the buildings, but it should be spectacular. I'm looking forward to being involved with it.
Me too.
Talking of the moon, we're going to use the moon as a pointer. For those people who don't know, when I keep saying about this is Jupiter, this is Mars, this is Venus, whatever, well, you can use the moon as a pointer. On the 3rd of January, which is on Friday, the moon, the crescent moon, will be very close to Venus. Very spectacular. You have a very, very close, very thin crescent moon with Venus quite close to it. That's followed by, a little bit later on, we've got on the 13th of January, the moon will be very close to, I've put moon near moon, that's very clever, Howard, have I done that? Moon near Mars, moon is going to be near Mars on the 13th of January, and it's also going to be near Jupiter on about the 10th of January. So you can let them, because what happens, of course, explaining this out scientifically, the moon, the sun, and all the planets go round the sun, like we go round the sun, and they go along a line. The line is called the ecliptic because eclipses happen there. You have the signs of the zodiac in that line as well. So the moon slowly but surely every 28 days processes along, and if there's a planet near it, it will be occulted or a bit close to the moon. I paused there about occultation because we have got what is known as an occultation on the 4th of January. Now this is something, if people want to see Saturn, I've mentioned Jupiter, I've mentioned Mars, and I've mentioned Venus. But poor old Saturn is up there as well. But Saturn is a lot fainter, in a part of the sky that's quite faint. Not easy for me to point out to you. But the moon will actually go in front of Saturn. It will actually go in front of Saturn on the 4th of January at 22 minutes past 5 and will re-emerge from the other side of the moon at 6:30. So a pair of binoculars is needed because the moon is even the small moon, the crescent moon, will still be sufficiently bright to swamp out the magnitude, the brightness of Saturn, but well worth a look for. Looking for that, because I've seen that once before and it is special. Get a telescope on it or a small pair of binoculars. Telescope's better if you've got one, and you can't miss it because just be looking around 5:15 onwards and you'll just see this little star, it looks like, just slowly disappear behind the bright limb of the moon. But then what will happen, it'll re-emerge from the dark part of the moon, which you can't see. So all of a sudden there's nothing there, and all of a sudden, bang, there will be Saturn. But Saturn's going to be disappointing this year for us because the rings are almost edge on to us. So it's not as spectacular as we normally get it. It does this every 13 years. So unfortunately, Saturn's not going to be as special as it would have been normally, but still worth a look on and around the 4th of January. I'm not going to go into this tonight because we've done this loads of times before, but this is one of an occultation of the planet Jupiter is one of the candidates for what was seen at the time of the birth of Jesus. And one of the explanations for the Star of Bethlehem was an occultation of the moon of the planet Jupiter.
Well, this is the fascinating thing because it is also predictable. That sounds as though like predictable boring. I don't mean that. Because you can work out what's happening, you are able to go back.
Well,
centuries.
The beauty of that is, now that's a great lead into a conversation, that, Judith, because we didn't know why the planets did what they did. We couldn't work it out. We couldn't understand why they did it. And it took Copernicus to realise that the Earth was not the centre of the universe, but actually went round the sun. Once he discovered that, and then Kepler came along and said the orbits are ellipses rather than circles, everything became clear. And you can now, with precision, work out exactly where the planets are going to be. Indeed, not just now or tomorrow or next month, but indeed going back in history as well. And you can work out, as I say, there was an occultation of the planet Jupiter by the moon way back in, I think it was 3 BC.
So you can say how it happened, but then why it happened.
That's another story altogether.
This is the mix.
This is the link, isn't it? Yeah.
This is where there is no conflict between science and religion.
No,
one informs the other.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because that's one of the things I've been asked to give a talk at the cathedral when the moon is in the cathedral. And I'm actually going to be talking about that one Sunday morning. I'm going to be giving a talk about, it's not going to be a sermon. Please don't think I'm going to deliver a sermon. That's the last thing I'm going to do. But I'm going to talk about the moon and how it does link with astronomy, and astronomy links with religion and all that sort of stuff. So
well,
looking forward to that myself.
Well, I'm looking forward to the whole thing, the whole exhibition, and there will be a proper programme of events.
There will be,
we're just
indeed.
randomly
There will
talking
be,
about
indeed.
things, but there will be a proper programme of events that will be widely distributed. And so if you're interested, you can pick something out that appeals to you and come along and enjoy this unique experience. I think we need some music, Howard.
I do, and I've got a special bit of music to play tonight because I understand, and I've had a text message from them. So hi, Robin and John, listening to us all the way down there in Sydney, down under. So I promised you a mention and I promised you a song. So here it is, especially for you. I'll let the song introduce itself.
Traveling in a fried-out combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady, she made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. And she said, do you come from a land down under, where women glow and men plunder? Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. He was 6'4" and full of muscle. I said, do you speak my language? He just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich. And he said, I come from a land down under, where Peter's flow and mentioned. Can't you hear the thunder?
Men at Work and Down Under has got absolutely nothing at all to do with space, has it, Howard?
None whatsoever. But that's Robin and John, especially listening down there in Sydney. She told me, I must just tell you, Judith, she rang me up on Christmas Day and said, I've just been for a swim on the beach. And as I was walking along the beach, coming back, there was a kangaroo ran across in front of me. I'm thinking, oh, didn't it make you sick?
Each to his own.
Absolutely.
It's just where we are in the world, isn't it?
I look forward to seeing them again in March. We're in Sydney in March, so I look forward to seeing them then.
Well, I just say thank you very much for joining us as we look at the MANX
Indeed.
Sky at Night.
Indeed,
and we're
thank
now
you.
going to look at space. Now,
Where do we start?
Well,
Yeah.
you see, Howard, you've got me reading all kinds of stories that I wouldn't have looked twice at before I got
Glad to hear
involved
it.
in this programme. And I saw something quite recently, perhaps I think it was in the last week, it was on BBC World News.
That's right.
And it was the issue of this Parker solar probe. And NASA was saying it's got closer than
It's
anything
closer
has ever
than
done?
any man-made object ever been to the sun. I just wrote it down. 3.8 million miles only from the sun. We are 93 million miles away from the sun. Mercury is 34. This probe, 3.8. Very close indeed. They're actually saying it's almost touching the sun, because the sun is quite a nebulous body. You can imagine it's got all these features, and I won't call it an atmosphere. It's not an atmosphere, but you don't have a surface like we have on the Earth. And for this probe to survive as well, it did it on the 24th of December, and it passed 3.8 million miles above the surface. And now it's going back round again to do it again in March and again in June. Every 3 months it's going to be doing this now. And the data it's collecting from the sun about the solar wind, the solar plasma, the corona, all this sort of stuff, it's going to enable us to learn more about the sun, because we don't understand about the sun. It lovely linked this to the aurora, which we saw so spectacular in the Alamein in October, and indeed last May. Good chance of seeing it again throughout 25. But everybody predicted that the solar activity, every 11 years we get this peak and trough of activity, everyone predicted, all the experts predicted, that the peak for 2024 was going to be lower than the peak of 2013. The exact opposite happened. The peak was dramatically higher, which is why we got to see such spectacular aurora, best for 70 years, they're telling us. And we don't know why. We don't know why the sun has this distinct cycle. It's not just a random thing. It has this distinct cycle. And if we go back, way back in time, to a thing called the Carrington event, when radio telegraphy was just starting off on the planet, and the communication across with radio telegraphs and all sorts of stuff, there was a massive solar outburst that wiped out all the telecommunications equipment. And that is a real possibility even for now. When we get lots of solar activity and material ripped in from the sun, which causes the aurora, it can cause problems. We need to know more about the sun, which takes us back nicely to the Parker Solar Probe, because having succeeded to have gone so close this time round, it'll now on its orbit bring it back round again in 3 months' time, and it'll do it again. And hopefully the data it's collecting will enable scientists to learn not everything, but a little bit more about the wonders of our nearest star, the sun, which is so valuable to us.
Well, of course, there's two things here, isn't it? First of all, isn't it amazing that there is still so much that we do not know?
Indeed.
For all that we do know, there's still so much. And it is so hard to discover.
Yeah.
How long will this probe last, Howard?
I believe it's got about 20 years life, potentially, depending on fuel.
Wow.
They were very concerned about it going so close to the sun, and the heat of the sun and the radiation and everything else, frying it, basically. It's got a huge carbon fibre shield, which they designed, which deployed after launch. And that shield has obviously protected it, because it went past the sun on the 23rd, and then it was around the other side of the sun from the Earth. We couldn't signal to it or from it. And on the 26th, on Boxing Day, they got a signal back from the probe to say it was still around, it was still broadcasting. So now they'll be downloading all the data, because, of course, you've got to appreciate when it's going around the sun, it's alternatively the wrong side of the sun and the right side of the sun. So they've got to, and they can only communicate with it when it's at the limbs of the sun, if you know what I mean, when it's not got the sun behind it or in front of it.
Yeah,
so they're very tight with the communication windows.
That actually anticipated my next question. I was going to ask you, how much control do they have over it? Or
Well, quite a bit. It's in orbit. And once a thing is in orbit, it's static. At orbit will not change. It's Newton's laws of motion, having acted upon by another force. They can fire thrusters to change its orbit a little bit, but basically it's passive. It's passive going around the sun, and basically it points its antenna in the right direction, downloads all the data, or uploads all the material, all the information it wants, and then at these 2 times of communication, it blasts it back to Earth. And there'll be PhDs and all sorts written about it for years. And hopefully it will last. I suspect what they'll do when it gets towards the end of its shelf life, if you like, they'll probably go even closer to the sun, and maybe they'll lose it, but they won't do that for some time yet, because they're very hopeful to get at least another 3 or 4 passes at least before it passes. It was launched in 2018, so it's 5-6 years old now already. And
so now that's interesting. If it was launched in 18, it must be moving, because this is the first time they've said it's got as close as...
Well, this is because it took a while to get there. The problem, if you send a spacecraft straight to one place to another, you're going to be getting there at a much faster speed than you want. You've got to slow it down, so you've got to carry engines and fuel and all the rest. So what they do with these spacecraft now, they use what they call gravitational assisted trajectories. They use the gravity of another object, the Earth maybe, or Venus, or Mars, or Jupiter, to speed them up, or indeed slow them down. And it's a wonderful technique that was invented by a chap called Flandreau in JPL back in the 70s. And this technique avoids the need to carry big rocket engines, which are basically useless once you've got where you're going. When you're in a passive orbit, your engine's no use to you. But if you can carry as much instrumentation as you want, to instruments to take measurements and everything else, then, of course, you can take a heavier payload, which is all scientific instrumentation.
And use the gravitational force.
Use the gravitational of the sun. I think it did Earth and Venus twice, I think, trajectory to get to the sun. And it only went into orbit, close orbit around the sun, I think, earlier this year. And obviously the orbit changes depending on where it is and what time it is and everything else.
And that's how it's got as close as it has.
First very close approach.
Yeah.
So it took that long to get there.
So it's going to be fascinating to see. It's probably going to be years before we know what the data tells us.
But it's just fascinating. And I won't say I'd forgotten about it, but it was one of those things that we knew was coming. And then to get this information on Christmas Day Boxing Day, as it turned out, we got the information that it was successful, was fascinating. And another example of NASA and ESA, the European Space Agency, are involved as well, working at their best.
They're all very clever there.
Oh, very clever people.
You didn't go after the job for the new NASA administrator then, Howard?
No, but I like the guy who's got it.
Go on then.
The guy who's got it is a chap called Jared Isaacman. And most people have never heard of him, but Jared Isaacman made his fortune out of, I can't remember, some internet thing he made his fortune on. But he's the guy who's twice been into space with SpaceX on what they call the, I forgot the name of the mission, Polaris Dawn was the last one he went on. And this is the guy who did the private spacewalk. Remember the pictures in about October? This guy doing this private spacewalk, sticking his head out. This is Jared Isaacman. Shift 4, which is out on your computer. You press Shift 4. It gives you a shortcut to something, and that's how he made his money about using that as an internet. I don't know where. But this chap, Jared Isaacman, has been appointed by Trump to be the new NASA administrator, replacing Bill Nelson, who, of course, is an old ex-astronaut. So now we've got another, well, I won't say ex-astronaut. You'll probably want to fly again, knowing Jared Isaacman. But a fascinating bloke, and it just shows the way that NASA are heading, or not NASA, the United States are heading now with President Trump appointing his close allies, politically and scientifically and everything else. He's very, very heavily involved with Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, of course, we'll talk about Elon Musk in just a moment. But these sort of characters now are going to revolutionise, I think, the way NASA work. And who knows what exciting things are ahead of us.
OK, you've got 30 seconds, Howard. What's the most important thing to tell me in 30 seconds?
Well, SpaceX. What are SpaceX going to do in 2025? Who knows? They're already talking of launching their Starship rocket. This has launched 6 times already in 2024. They want to quadruple that to 25. They're even talking of sending a Starship, which hasn't even gone into orbit properly yet, to land on the moon unmanned up by the end of 2025. Absolutely incredible. And I make a prediction here and now. There will be big news coming out very soon about NASA and their SLS rocket and SpaceX and their big rocket. I think there's going to be a huge change in the way they do things. And I think it's going to be led a lot by SpaceX and Elon Musk. And I think in space travel in particular, there's going to be a lot of exciting news. We look with interest to see what's going on.
And you are the man to tell us about it.
I certainly look forward to doing it.
Howard Parkin, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
My absolute pleasure.
You will be back final Sunday in the month of January.
26th of January.
In the meantime, Howard, Blaine Vai Noa, we wish you a very, very happy New Year.
And the same to you, and Happy New Year to everyone who's listening.